I suppose we should start this episode with a bit of a history lesson. A long time ago, dinosaurs ruled the Earth. Sometime before that, The Simpsons used to be a good TV show. It's a show that's state just makes me really sad. The Simpsons defined much of the 90s, and could have once upon a time be considered the greatest shows of all time. In my opinion, seasons 2 through 8 really hold up as some of the best sitcom seasons in history. For those who lost track, we're past season 30. I'd give you the specific number, but this review would be out of date when it ticks over to season 40 in 2 years, and then season 50 2 months after that. When SpongeBob went sour, when The Fairly Odd Parents went sour, when Family Guy went sour, those shows had an inclination to make me feel more angry than anything else. They got gross or violent or mean-spirited. They had episodes that just made me retch. It was like watching a Klingon and a Vogon collaboration to create human entertainment. Family Guy saying that Meg should take her abuser's shit for her abuser's benefit, and that Quagmire's sister isn't a woman because she's being abused, that strikes a nerve. It makes me feel horror for humanity. Hearing Marge say the word noob through a voice that her actress is so desperately trying to hang on to hurts my soul.
What a noob. I am such a noob. What a noob.
I've seen shows seem tired before, Fairly Odd Parents Season 10, but I've never seen a show this tired. Every writer, every voice actor, every single person on the show just seems to want it to all be over so they can finally move on to something else. And it's been like this for a while. Once upon a time, people said that Season 9 was what was going to kill The Simpsons, where the passion died and the staff gave up completely. And I remind you, we're closing in on Season 39. Season 9 gave us the episode Principal and the Pauper, which ended up completely changing a character's history, a character a lot of people liked and were interested in his development, for what amounted to very little reason at all. I already gave a review to Miracle on Evergreen Terrace, which answers the question, what if we wrote a Christmas special specifically engineered to piss people off? And of course, we have my least favorite episode of all of Season 9, Lisa the Simpson. So let's talk about Lisa the Simpson. Discussion of the decline of the show could also more or less accurately describe her. With the exception of Homer, Lisa's character has had the most derailment over the years. Although, at this point, it is hard to keep track, to be fair. Good-hearted but annoying neighbor to a Christian cultist. Competent doctor who became so deranged the show had no use for Dr. Nick anymore.
Bye, everybody.
Lisa started out as a smart girl with principles about what she believed in everything from environmentalism to feminism. Then, in the immortal words of Ned Flanders, she became
Springfield's answer to a question no one asked!
Wholeheartedly. She became one of the most arrogant characters out there, not just smarter than her entire family, but the entirety of the city of Springfield, and someone happy enough to show that off. And the worst part of that is that one of the show's favorite formats became showcasing just how misunderstood poor little Lisa Simpson truly was. A new genre of Simpsons episode was invented, the Lisa Pity Party episode. While there were episodes from the start that had Lisa going through some inner turmoil, such as Moaning Lisa at Lisa Substitute, they felt a lot more real, a lot more understandable than something like Lisa Goes Gaga. When Lisa became a Buddhist and a vegetarian, it seemed like it meant something. Then you have episodes like Lisa the Simpson, which can be best described as Much Ado About Nothing. This review is going to be a bit different because it's like the episode Daylight Savings from the Powerpuff Girls, where I can just state the premise, and the problem with the episode is right there in plain text. So Lisa feels that she's getting dumber when she can't solve a puzzle on the back of her lunchbox. Then her grandfather informs her that it's the Simpsons gene, a gene which determines that all Simpsons get dumber as they get older. Lo and behold though, no, it only affects the men in the Simpsons family. So for the entire 22 minutes, when we see Lisa fret about losing her intelligence, going to art museums, seeing jazz shows, writing in her journal about what's going to happen, nothing is going to happen. Nothing. Nada. Nothing at all. Absolutely nothing is going to happen. As in, apocalyptic preppers are probably more right than Lisa Simpson is in caring about this. Remember in Harry Potter when we learned that Voldemort didn't exist and Harry and his friends were learning magic to stop him for no reason? Remember how Frollo and Sam were taking the ring to the volcano to stop Sauron, but learned that he didn't exist and all that journeying was for no reason whatsoever? Like, this isn't impossible to make work, but it's impossible to make work as the resolution to your episode. Finding out that you've been lied to is usually the start of the conflict, not the end of it. Because when it is the end of it, you get these meandering scenes about nothing that end up not mattering at all. This is a comedy show, not a Linkin Park song. You can't end something like this. One thing that The Simpsons has often criticized for is throwing away its continuity. More so as the episodes go on. The Simpsons and continuity is a huge discussion that can go on for several hours until it invariably ends in a fistfight, so I'll try to truncate it here. Continuity in The Simpsons is weird. It's not completely episodic, and it's not completely bound to continuity either. For example, when Ned's wife died in season 11, she stayed dead from that point on, only appearing in flashbacks and as a ghost a couple of times. However, she did appear in future episodes written before she died, such as Lisa's wedding. Same thing with Edna. The past and the future episodes really do change over things a lot. However, even in the past and the future, some things remain consistent. For example, more than one episode hints that Bart is going into law when he gets older. In Itchy and Scratchy the movie, he becomes Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In another future episode, he says he's getting his aggression out of demolition before going to law school.
There's more to my life than just the wrecking ball. I also crush cars into cubes. Basically, I'm getting out all my aggression till I go to law school.
He also has the same ex-wife in several episodes. Then again, in one of those future episodes, Homer randomly gets cloned a million times that never amounts to anything in any other episode. A lot of people would argue that continuity thing was thrown out when we got to That 90s Show. You know, where this show, yeah, that one, That 90s Show. This one here, the show that first aired in 1989, spent 10 years in the 90s, and had more than 100 episodes in the 90s, decided that what it really wanted to do was spend an episode making fun of the 90s and destroying continuity while doing so, saying that Marge went to college in the 90s before Bart and Lisa were born in the 80s, despite her going to high school in the 70s. And fair is fair, continuity is played fast and loose in The Simpsons. But there has to be a level of believability. One scene in this episode, Grandpa shows that Bart's schoolwork actually used to be really good before the Simpson gene took over. Let me ask you this, does any single episode before this one even remotely hint that possibly could have happened? Does any single episode after this one even remotely hint that possibly could have happened? The answer is no, because that didn't happen, because this premise is stupid, because it doesn't make any sense. Before this episode, we saw Homer's half-brother Herb, a male Simpson who actually had a successful life before Homer more or less screwed him over. After this episode, we see Homer's half-sister, who doesn't appear all that intelligent. But let's pretend for one solid minute that these characters just don't exist anymore. You have Grandpa Simpson to get around. Grandpa Simpson has a lot of unintelligent and bumbling moments. He's often seen as exceptionally stupid, but those are, senior moments. It's usually implied that he has these moments because he's old. In any of his flashbacks, and even in the modern era, when he's not the butt of an old person joke, he's usually seen as having fairly average intelligence. He's at least smarter than Homer. The strangest thing is that this very premise isn't the most unbelievable thing The Simpsons ever pulled. We're not talking about a Principal Tamzarian here. There are genetic errors and disorders that only do exist on the Y chromosome. Male pattern baldness is one of them, and hemophilia is another one. In cartoon Simpsons logic, I can believe that this is something that can happen, because it's not out of the realm of possibility for the Simpsons gene to exist, except for one little reason. That I've seen The Simpsons. Hundreds of episodes that directly contradict such a thing from existing. Honestly, seeing all of these Homer and Lisa lookalikes at the end is also quite baffling. Where did all of these people come from? Grandpa wasn't that busy, and even if he was, I don't think that he'd be giving Homer all of the information on all of these people. You have to understand how frustrating it is. They created all of these Simpsons characters to force a plot, while not bringing in the one Simpson character that did exist beforehand that completely breaks the plot. There's also another thing that we should probably talk about here.
The defective Simpson gene is on the Y chromosome, so only men are affected.
Some people think that this episode is sexist. What? I don't know what you're talking about. The Simpsons being sexist?
See, Lisa? Males aren't hard to tame. They all follow their video cartridges.
The show where the daughter is smarter than the father, and the son constantly pales to his sister? It's a 90s sitcom. It's just what they do. Seriously, go back and watch any sitcom up to the mid-2000s, and if you gender swap the family, it would get you banned on Twitter. Could you imagine if Hal did even 1% of what Lois did? Could you imagine if Tim the Tool's wife was incompetent as him, and gave a cavewoman grunt and a stupid face every third minute of the show? And it was implied that that's just how women are? What I'm saying is, yes, this episode is sexist, but the entire genre of sitcoms has a propensity to be. It's not like that episode where Marge gets amnesia through no fault of Homer's and then kicks him out of the house that he owns because she thought that he wasn't good enough for her. There's a kind of not really funny story about this. It's actually a tragedy. This entire episode showcases exactly why this might not be the happy ending that Lisa or the writers think it is.
This is crazy. Just because you and Dad and Bart went downhill doesn't mean it's gonna happen to me. Does it?
Sure, but it doesn't mean you can't live a long and pointless life.
Intelligence and unhappiness tend to run hand in hand. I don't know if this is controversial or anything, but there does seem to be a bit of a theory on this. And it is something that a lot of people have noticed and speculated on. A smart person tends to know that they are smart. A lot of stupid people think that they're smart too, but that's neither here nor there. A smart person knows that they're smart, and they know that they have potential. Continually. No matter what they do, ever. No matter what they do, they will understand that there's a potential that they will never reach. No matter how many books they write, how many films they make, or how many inventions they create, there will always be something more that that person could have done. And the smart person is aware of this. Continually. They are aware of this. Until the very end. Meanwhile, stupid people like Bart and Homer are unaware of their own potential. Do you really think that Bart is going to be disappointed in himself at any point in his entire life? Lisa is constantly frustrated by the masses flocking to the lowest common denominator, which is an objective fact of life. While Bart is entertained with buildings blowing up, Lisa is going to have a richer, better life that is better for humanity. And yet, Bart is going to have a happier life. Remember, this episode is all about Lisa making herself miserable by wondering if she was becoming dumber, something that wasn't going to happen and was a waste of time to worry about. Do you really think that Bart would ever waste his time with something like this? Especially when there are TV shows about buildings blowing up. Dumb people don't really get caught up in philosophical questions of what the grand sum of their life means. And because they're not exactly concerned with what their life means, they have an opportunity to actually enjoy it. I'm not saying smart people can't be happy. I'm just saying that Lisa is the type of smart person who is never going to be happy. Especially next to Bart. Because she is going to continually get caught up in random bullshit that doesn't end up to anything except a waste of 22 minutes, which she has been doing for the past 20 years now. Funny story, one of the core tenets of Buddhism is to, let things go. You know, one thing the most famous television Buddhist, Lisa Simpson, never, ever, 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 ever does. And it's a tenet of Buddhism because Lisa Simpson shows exactly why it's a tenet of Buddhism, the religion she claims to be a part of. Buddhism preaches detachment from worldly desire because you ended up wasting a lot of time and making yourself miserable. This is an aside, but Lisa is the least Buddhist character that I have ever come across. She ain't got no zen, man. It's like her entire character was almost directly designed to be opposed to the ideology of Buddhism. Lisa the Simpson was a waste of time. Lisa the character will continue to waste time for the rest of her life, as the show she's a part of will also continue to waste time until the end of time.